Session. Need to get a motion to go into special session, please.
So moved.
The second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're in special session. First is a public hearing, fiscal year 2017-18 tax rate and the fiscal year 2017-18 budget. Michelle?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and citizens of the City of Hagerstown. When the city published our public notice for our real property tax rate increase that will be effective July 1 of 2017, it included a proposed tax increase of 5.5 cents per $100 of real estate assessment. As of this evening, that amount has been reduced to 2.8% adjustment over current year, which is the constant yield, which simply means the rate that is now being adjusted to for fiscal year 18 is the amount per the State Department of Assessment and Taxation for the city to receive the same amount of revenue and on average for the citizens and the residents to have no impact. Our current rate is 91.3 cents per $100 of real estate. The new fiscal year 18 budget is proposed to be 94.10 cents per $100 of assessed value. By changing the real estate tax rate, it impacts and also changes the corporate personal property rate. At the time of the notice in the paper and at the time of printing of the budget book, we had included a 13.8 cents increase per $100 of personal property. As of this evening, that has been reduced and adjusted to 7 cents per $100 on the corporate personal property side. The current rate is $2.28 per $100 for personal property, and the new adjusted fiscal year 18 budget will be $2.35 per $100. This will be in effect from July 1 of 2017 through June 30 of 2018. Next, we're going to go ahead and just cover in total the City of Hagerstown proposed budget for fiscal year 18. Again, at the time of the notice for the public hearing, the general fund included total expenses and uses of funds to be approximately $44.4 million. As of this evening, after adjustments, that has been reduced to $43.9 million, a reduction of $455,584 on the expense side. The other adjustment is in the capital improvement projects, and this fund is where the general fund projects are for anything that's greater, for an individual project that will exceed $5,000. At the time of the proposed fiscal year 18 budget, that amount was $12.2 million, and as of this evening, it's $12.1, a reduction of $168,146. So for proposed budget for, again, fiscal year beginning July 1, 2017 through June 30 of 2018, the general fund is proposed to have $43,966,577 in expenses. And in grand total, across the entire city, that amount is $129,822,959. Again, the amount for the entire city includes all of our utility funds, our community development block grant fund, as well as our capital improvement project. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we'll now open it to questions.
We have two individuals who have signed up. We'll call them first, and then after that, if anybody else wishes to speak, you may. We're going to lump it all together, for and against. Scott Brower. Address, please, Scott.
Yes.
Yes, Scott Brower. The address is 1400 Hamilton Boulevard.
Could you raise your microphone up just a little bit?
Sorry. Can you hear me now? Scott Brower, 1400 Hamilton Boulevard, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21742. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, Chief Brito. I put down that I'm against the tax increase on the sheet because that's all that it has to offer, yay or nay. But really what I'd like to say is a little bit more nuanced. Where I stand as a citizen of this city, I've been a homeowner for 13 years. I've lived in the county continuously, in and around Hagerstown since '92, and then on and off since 1981. So I've seen the history of Hagerstown through a child's eyes, a young adult's eyes, a 51-year-old homeowner's eyes. And I'll speak from my neighborhood only, and I'll speak from the perspective of, the frame of reference of someone with an MBA, an economics degree, finance degree. What I found troubling about at the meetings that I've attended so far, and I'm relatively new to the city council, city governance issue, budgetary issues. The early meetings gave me the sense that there wasn't urgency. In fact, the management discussion and analysis piece, the paragraphs that come in front of the 428 pages of budget, there was no urgency. Where I come from in corporate America, having gone through massive downsizings at 2 publicly traded companies, where I had budgetary, finance, and strategic planning responsibility, when things are that tight, you got to read some urgency in it. And I read, and perhaps it's because I don't know everything, I'm not here for all the deliberations, I didn't see the urgency in the words, nor did I hear urgency in the words of council members at the couple of meetings that I've attended. So I would urge Mayor Brucey, council members, do what you need to do, but we have to start being a little bit more far-sighted. I recently had occasion in the past week to visit Cumberland and to visit Frederick. They're not all demographically the same. They all have their pros and their cons and their issues that they're dealing with. And I could see Hagerstown figuratively and literally in the middle. Are we going to go the path of Cumberland? Or are we going to go towards the path of Frederick? Now, there's a lot of things involved in that, and we're just talking about taxes right now. But one thing that I do know from my experience, if you raise taxes now, without a clear plan for what's going to happen in the future, without a clear plan for investments that are going to bring jobs, stabilize communities, address the crime issues, if there's not a clear plan, it's just going to be coming back to the well every time. And if there aren't measures in place to preserve assessed values, that nominal rate per $100 of assessed value is just going to keep going up and up. So I urge that the deliberations be looked at almost on a war footing. And I realize it's like trying to fly a broken plane while you're also trying to fix it. But just be cognizant of the fact that the problems that Hagerstown faces are endemic and they're structural, and I know they're being addressed right now. But I urge all of you to think about laying out the groundwork, not only for the balance of your individual terms, and if you wish and are lucky enough to be returned to office, but for the people that will precede you. That's it. I hope that made some sense in the end. So I'm not exactly against the 2.8, but I just want to make sure you guys are being very, very sharp with your pencils. Thank
Just
you
so
very
you
much.
know that we are in line with your way of thinking. We know that, keep in mind, this administration came in halfway through this budget season, but the focus will be, when this budget is done, which as far as I'm concerned is June 1st, because that's when we will pass the ordinance, will go into effect July 1. We will begin working on a long-term fiscal stability plan for the city of Hagerstown, and not just, as you say, every year coming back and we're doing the same thing over and over again, and we're not getting any different results. So again, we're on your page.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Noggle?
Hello. Thank you. I really wasn't intending to speak. I signed up so as not to jump security. However, interested in what the previous gentleman had to say, and I think I'm in accord with the back and forth. I missed the meeting that you all attended due to a packed schedule. It completely slipped my mind. I drove by the firehouse and saw everybody sitting down there. That's when I remember. So but what I gather was that you made a fairly convincing argument that there's some budgetary problems. So I want to wait until I really understand this. And it appears there's been some response. If I interpret this lady's remarks, there's been a response. So I'm going to say two things on top of that. I'll try to be brief. You've heard this from me before. I believe that the structure that's governing the locality here, Washington County and the city, is of the era from which it came, very old, 1800s, and that it deserves to be looked at. So your comments, Mayor, that you're going to look at the overview in the future is very welcome. And if there's going to be study money spent, it would be better spent, in my opinion, on this sort of thing. Let's look at the big picture and see what we can do to refine and economize our government, and especially, and I don't have any details on overlapping jurisdictions. It's just that I've lived in more than one, and I know they're there. And so they need to be flushed out and terms arranged so that governmental agencies don't get into long-term headbutts about the change. And, you know, this is a fairly long-term process, but in the end, I would like to see some of the investment that is coming into this area because it has reasonably good education, land available, low costs generally, but in our case, I make the assertion that the Maryland tax structure is against us with regard to Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Just by reading the newspaper, I see where the projects go. And I'd be willing to bow to any study that makes that more definite, what we're talking about. So I think I've run out of thoughts. That's what I wanted to say, and appreciate that you are considering. I did have one other thing. I said I had a couple of things. The other thing was, you people serve at a very low rate of remuneration. The bureaucracy that exists is quite a bit larger and, let's face it, more well-paid than you. And it has somewhat of a mind of its own, although I'm not dissatisfied with the government here. You have people know that I've dealt with the government here, little neighborhood issues, and I'm very satisfied. But they are going to try to keep their departments alive. And there's a certain inertia there that would behoove you, if I may humbly suggest, to consider a directive to all departments. Tell us where you can reduce your expenses by 5%. Everybody needs to report out on this within the next 18 months or something like that. Just for, let's have this in the bag or in the pocket, the side pocket, lest we need, in case we need it. That's a rough idea. Sorry for the long-windedness.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Knuckle.
Thank you.
That's all who have signed up to speak. Anybody else who wishes to speak still, please step up to the podium, give us your name and address.
Hello. This is Jenna Bartels from speaking and representative of my neighbors on the 100 block of South Mulberry Street. Virginia has lived on that street for 56 years. I have lived there for 12. And Marcia has lived there for 9 on South Mulberry Street. And talking on the budget, in kind of, we're all concerned. Since the mortgage crisis, the Great Recession, things have only gotten worse. And I think that, and we are a targeted neighborhood with urban partners. But the number one problem is the unfair taxation. We do not get proper, and I've researched this several times, we do not get proper representation for city services in the tax code there. I have the poorest people pay the highest taxes. And we've done, that's the way it's always been, and Virginia living there so long has seen what has happened to the neighborhood. And I have too in the 12 years I've been here. Many of us who own and bought during the height of the crisis are underwater, and there are new games going on to kind of sell houses that are underwater, and we're having kind of a replay of what happened in the housing boom to try to alleviate what happened when it crashed. So one of the things I'm very concerned about is investing in the neighborhoods, which you make it easy for people to do the right thing. We, when my husband and I were head of Neighborhoods First, we had worked with the neighborhood at putting a lot of garbage cans around. There aren't enough, there are much fewer than there used to be. And I think keeping up with making it easy, if I am going to pick up something and I can't see a garbage can in sight, I don't carry it with me. And that's what is happening. But if you have them, like the Disney effect, you have enough around, then you have less litter. And we've noticed litter increasing as we're always cleaning up the front of our houses. Then also, you have to, in addition to that, you have to have, we have street trees. I would suggest that a horticulturist be hired to take care of plantings and things to make this more beautiful. You used to plant the street pits, you don't anymore. I would also suggest that you have more gardens around the city. I suggest that the Virginia remembers when the Bester property there, when there were greenhouses, and you went up and got plants for, you know, your farm, your garden, whatever. Why not? Cities like us are that have featured economic duress are doing urban agriculture. We need to do that. That hospital property should not be hollow, but just be sitting there collecting. And you need to enforce all the ordinances, like if you put plantings in street trees, you're not going to have as much dog waste and as much litter. And we ought to work, I've taken the course and I want to work with Jerry Kindle for crime prevention through environmental design. I'm trying to do plantings along the alleys. And so just make this a really decent place. I mean, a really beautiful, livable city, and it's not right now. It's not, believe me. So I think we can all work together, but you can't have this tax increase and make the taxation, it's so unfair. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Janet. Anyone else? Okay, Michelle, you want to close it out? Are you done with your presentation? Any questions from the council for Michelle? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And We will move on to the introduction of an ordinance, tax rates beginning July 1, 2017. Get a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for the introduction, excuse me, I move for the introduction of an ordinance, May 16, 2017, to establish the city's tax rates for the fiscal year July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2018 on the basis of 0.941 per $100 of assessed value of all real property and 2.353 per 100 of assessed value of all business personal property within the city of Hagerstown. These rates reflect an increase of 0.028 per $100 for real property and 0.070 per $100 for business personal property over the current year.
Need to get a second.
Second?
Discussion?
Yes. Very briefly, and I'm glad the folks that came this evening and spoke were able to do so. I think certainly appreciate the feedback. You know, and I was one of the individuals that attended the meeting out there at the fire hall, and you know, had a conversation with a number of folks from the neighborhood. You know, one of the things that I've talked about at this table and that I tried to express at that meeting was our view of the tax rate. And, you know, and I use myself as the example, and I was glad that two other individuals spoke this evening, because I actually pulled up your examples as well, and I think it's a good sort of diagram as it applies to the tax rate itself. So using myself, you know, my assessed value of my home, I live in the South End, it's dropping about $20,000 this year. So that's about an 11% drop. In the state of Maryland, what we abide by here at this table is if that assessment goes up, we can't apply a rate higher than 5%. So we can't raise it any more than 5% in that given each of those given periods in the triennial assessment of a property. But mine's going down from 156 to 136, I believe. So my taxes that I paid this year at the rate that we have right now is $1,424. That's my city tax bill. If we were to keep the same exact rate and we were to apply that rate to what mine dropped, my tax bill next year would be $1,241. So I would drop about $183. That's the total amount that I would save, so to speak. If you add back in the 2.8 cents to the increase, in my example, my tax rate will be, or my tax bill will be $1,279. So instead of it seeing a $183 decrease to my actual effective amount that I'm going to pay, I'm going to see $38 less than that. So 150 some dollars, or $145, sorry, $145 is what I'm actually going to see, even though the tax rate is going up. As just one example, my actual amount that I pay will go down $145. The difference of that $38 to me is about $3 a month more than it would have been, even though I'm still saving that. So if you were to actually say to me, you know, we're going to raise your taxes this year, the city would have to actually raise the tax rate 13.5 cents before I'd ever actually see a higher tax bill next year. So I think that's important to understand, and I think that, and you used the two examples of the other two individuals that spoke here this evening. Mr. Brower from Hamilton, you know, I pulled that example up, and you actually are going to see about a $2,000 increase in your assessment from this year to next year for about a $2,100 or about $2,100 change. And if you apply the new tax rate, it'll be $60 more for the year. So in your example, you know, you're one of the folks that, because the assessment's going up slightly on the home, you know, you're going to see an additional $5 a month, is roughly. And to break that down even further, out of that $60, about $42 to $45 of that goes to police and fire. So, you know, a big chunk of that goes to public safety right away. And I think that's important because that's one of the messages that I heard, at least, at that meeting of the folks in the north end. And then I take Mrs. Bartel's example. You don't see any change. You're fortunate yours is set 88,300 the year before and the year before that. And so as I think that Michelle spoke earlier, you know, as it applies to the average person, you are that average person. You will see no change whatsoever. The $830 tax bill that you got last year will be the $830 tax bill you get this year. There's no change, even though that rate. So that just gives you some, you know, some various examples that I thought was important, because we get so hung up on what that little number in the rate is that we don't actually sit down and look at our tax bill that we get. So.
And along that line, I would note that all you have to do is Google an address, and you can get to Zillow, and you can find out things like the vast majority of our citizens, if not all of our citizens, are writing out checks for their taxes less today than they were 10 years ago. Now, I left my sheet that the staff prepared downstairs, but I will tell you, looking at Zillow and my address, 2005, the taxes I wrote according to Zillow were $2,400. 10 years later, in 2015, they were $1,448. So again, I will also be the first one to tell you that in 2009, my house was assessed at $226,000, and in 2015, it was $154,000. That's the issue, is the assessments are going down dramatically for 80%. And we have one gentleman here who your assessment is going up. Thank you. You have a beautiful home, I might add, and have maintained it very well. But I do want to emphasize that if you look at a graph over the last 15 years, the vast majority of people in this city are paying less taxes than they were 10 years ago. And we constantly are told we're raising taxes. And the fact is, folks, it's not true. Taxes, whenever taxes get lowered, people call us liars. They say, you didn't lower taxes 5 years ago. You didn't do this. That's not the truth. And the truth is, most people in this town are paying less for taxes than they were 10 years ago. What other service or commodity can you say that that's true of?
Anybody else on the ordinance for the tax rate?
First of all, I appreciate, as well as Councilman Alshire indicated, the citizens coming out to speak today. And I appreciate the examples that he laid out, as along with Councilman Messer did. I don't subscribe to that same line of thinking. I'm in the same position as Mr. Brower is, where my assessment went up, so my taxes are going up. I am, I guess, part of the 20% that taxes are increasing. I mean, the reality is the bases continue to go down. Now, that being said, to think that we should still be paying equivalent or close to equivalent of that same amount that we've been paying in the past, to me, is just not appropriate. I do appreciate this body's work as far as getting it down to the constant yield. I think Mr. Brower is correct. At the beginning of our deliberations, I don't think there was an urgency. It's kind of tough when you come out of the gate and you already have a 3-member majority who was okay with the 5.5 cents. Now we've worked through that and have gotten it down some. There have been a lot of discussions of, as Mr. Noggle indicated, about just taking 5% off the top. We talked about each department possibly going back to look to see, I believe it was 10% we had talked about at one time. Majority of this body did not feel that was appropriate. We talked about reviewing and reducing individual department budgets. Again, the body did not feel that was appropriate. We talked about reducing staffing or hiring freezes. Again, this body did not feel that was an appropriate course of action. There's no doubt, as Councilman Alshire has indicated before and as Mr. Brower indicated, that we cannot continue to go along the same path in the future. It's just not sustainable. So hopefully, as the mayor alluded here, starting in June, we will look at ways to correct this issue. You know, I made a commitment last fall to the voters of Hagerstown for fiscal responsibility. I may be in the minority in this body, but I stand to hold that commitment. There are others in this body that made similar commitments and at this moment in time have decided to change course. I appreciate again everyone coming out to speak this evening. I will not be in favor of this ordinance. Thank you.
Anybody else, or can we call
yeah.
the question?
I have something to say.
Okay.
Maybe I attended different meetings, but I don't think there was ever a 3-person majority that said we agreed for the 5.5-cent tax increase. I think everybody sitting up here wanted to find a way to cut the budget. And that's what we did. To say we didn't ask staff to cut, I mean, we went through 3, 4, 5 weeks of asking for cuts and figuring out where we could find money at. To suggest laying staff off is not as easy as it sounds. By laying people off, you have to decrease services, and not one time did somebody say what service they wanted decreased. We can't decrease police because everyone has an issue with the crime. We can't decrease fire because if your house catches on fire, they have to be there. You know, if it snows, you want the snow removed. You want better trash removal. Cutting staff is not as easy as just laying somebody off. That means a decrease in services. And I don't think anyone up here wants to vote for a tax increase, and it is easy to vote no, but there was nothing proposed to figure out the rest of the $700,000 to make up for that decrease. So it's easy to vote no, but there was no solution offered to fill that gap. And we've tried very hard to find money to cut. You know, it's not like we just turned a blind eye to it or that any of us want to pay more taxes. But again, the city offers services. We have to provide those services. And we spent a lot of weeks with staff trying to find every single dollar that we could to squeeze out of this budget. So I appreciate the work that staff put in. I think all of us remain dedicated to trying to avoid this situation in the future. You know, we've had 5 months as a body. We were thrown directly into budget season. And I know it's all of our goals to start creating sustainability because we all feel the same way that you guys feel. We got to start planning for the future. But as of this budget, it wasn't as easy as just laying staff off or finding $700,000. So I appreciate all your work.
Anybody else?
Yes, Mayor. None of us likes to vote for taxes. They come out of our pocket too. And many of us are finding that we're in a position at a certain stage in life where our income is less than it had been in previous parts of our lives. And it is easy to vote no, regardless of the circumstances. But you know, I, as a city councilman, was not elected to see Hagerstown bleed to death, cut by cut. Our tax base, the base on which we are dependent for almost all our general fund money, has been dropping on average for 9 years. Now, you can't have your income drop for 9 years and be able to expect to have the same services or even slightly reduced services, frankly, without, you just can't do that. It just doesn't work. And I feel that it's necessary to vote for this tax increase, although I don't like doing so. But I am not going to sit here and watch Hagerstown die by degrees. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Next up, introduction of an ordinance budget for fiscal year 17-18.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for the introduction of an ordinance May 16th, 2017, to adopt the city's budget for fiscal year July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2018, in the total amount of $129,822,959.
Second.
Discussion?
The only thing I would add to that is I appreciate Councilmember Munson's comments in regards to not going to watch Hagerstown bleed, but Just 3 years ago, we had a 78.8 cents tax rate. Now we're going to a 94.1. I think we are bleeding a slow death, unfortunately, here. And so,
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Approval of an ordinance, the City of Hagerstown Police and Fire Employees Retirement Plan.
Mr. Mayor, I have moved for approval of an ordinance to amend the City of Hagerstown Police and Fire Employees Retirement Plan in order to amend the plan to, one, eliminate interest to be credited on employee contributions other than refundable contribution transfers from the Maryland State Retirement System after June 30, 2017. Two, permit a rehired employee to repay a cash-out distribution with interest at any time prior to reaching a termination date. Three, permit the election to transfer prior service with other government employers to be made at any time prior to reaching a termination date. And four, make administrative clarifications consistent with Maryland law.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. City Administrator's comments, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd just like to thank you all and staff, Finance Department, and all the department heads and all the staff work these last few months in getting us a budget and passing our budget this evening so that we can begin the hard work ahead of us of the future and some strategic planning and those things that we have in front of us. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Val.
That's all.
Mr. Osha?
I don't have any.
Paul?
The only thing I have to add was I forgot last week to wish, happy Mother's Day. I know it's belated here now, but Councilmember Keller and Ms. Means, and that's all.
I have a couple comments. One, I apologize for being late. I was chaperoning 93rd graders at the DC Zoo, so I am exhausted, and so I apologize ahead of time. Today's National Police Week, or this week is National Police Week, so I just want to say thank you to HPD and also to Chief Brito. Pretty sure I can speak on behalf of everyone that you are an absolute asset to the city. We appreciate everything you do. We honor you this week for Police Week and the rest of your department. Thank you. Sure.
Thanks, Chief.
To the firefighters, congratulations on a successful bonanza. They raised, very successful for me. But they raised $200,000 for local nonprofits that they're going to give out in June, and it's pretty amazing. It was a great time, so congratulations to them, and I thank them for what they do for the community. And last but not least, I would like to, well, one, congratulate Change Health on their grand opening that they had yesterday. But I would like to talk about the article that was run in Herald Mail regarding their movement. And I was disheartened as an elected official that represents the city to read some of the comments that were made by members of this body and also by members of the community. Mental health is extremely stigmatized already, and to add to that stigma is horrible. I mean, there's people, you have to be a very brave person to seek treatment for a mental health illness, and it's ravaging our community. I don't know if you guys realize this or not, but right now we're facing a 4 to 6 week wait on mental health services, which is adding to the addiction problem that we're having. And we want to talk about revitalizing downtown or revitalizing Hagerstown. We're not going to revitalize it with a bunch of untreated mental illness and drug addiction walking around. And for those people who are brave enough to go get help, to feel like the city that they're going to get help in doesn't appreciate them being there. And for those people, the employees that go in every day and do a service, I know there were issues in the past, but they moved to try to address some of the issues that were given and expand to provide more same-day services. And I was disheartened by the comments made. That's, like I said, stigmatizing an already stigmatized community. So I apologize to the employees and to the patients of that place that had to read that and had to read some of the comments that were made. I think that we need to do better than that. We can't keep burying our head in the sand like Washington County has done over the past several years regarding the mental health and addiction crisis, because clearly we're not doing a very good job of treating it. So I think turning a blind eye to it and making comments about it is not doing anyone justice. And we're not going to grow as a city until we start fixing those problems and encouraging people to get the help that they need. So,
Lou?
that's all.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Don?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to make this comment. I'd like to give kudos and compliments to our city manager, Valerie Means, on her vision with regard to the second floor hallway here at City Hall.
Thanks.
She saw that with a little bit of improvement, actually quite a bit, a lot could come out of it. We had a drop ceiling out there, which was maybe popular in the 50s or 60s, I don't know when. She had enough vision to see that if that drop ceiling were gone, how much more attractive the hallway would be. She got it painted. She got rid of wires that were running through the ceiling, hundreds of wires that were running through the ceiling. And in the last term, of course, the Historical Society asked us permission to display a bell out there, which is now out there, and quite lovely, actually, and brass and historic. All in all, it's a very nice job, and it was only because of Val Means' vision that happened, and I want to say thank you personally and congratulations on it.
Well, thank you, and you're welcome for that, and it was a lot of work from Public Works staff. You're right about the wires, and when I saw that, I couldn't imagine how all those wires are going to disappear, but they made it happen and have done a wonderful job on it. So, still a little work to do on it. Get the pictures hung up again, and we have a little high school that will be hanging above the bell as well, but thank you.
Apparently, we're going back the other way. Lou?
Sorry, Mayor, I just realized that I do need to say one thing. You know, we had a long-term businessman from downtown, Mike Snyder, whether it was Bogart's next to Charisma on Jonathan Street, or Casablanca. I guess it started as Casablanca, and then Bogart's across the street, and then on Northern Avenue passed away within the last 48 hours. And Michael was a very well-known fellow and a friend to many, and was a strong supporter of our downtown, and I know would have liked to have remained here in the downtown, but for some problems with the landlord at the time. So just best wishes to all involved. Thank you.
All right. I have nothing. So, with that, we'll adjourn. Good evening. See you next Tuesday.